Hey, look, somebody asked me a question. I better answer it. Hey, it's Aaron from AaronOnAutos.com. Answering questions today. This is number 3 out of 3. And this is a really good one because it hits on something that a lot of people just don't seem to get. Culturally in the U.S., we tend to think of American things as being U.S. American stuff. And we don't tend to think of them as being, a foreign origin, right? So we think of things as they're American. Despite the fact that almost everything in this country actually comes from somewhere else. We have a lot of things that are ours that we came up with. It's ours. But culturally, most of the stuff we do, including the language we're speaking, was not created here. So the question this is a question from Casey. The question is, are any of the major automobile manufacturers based in the United States? If so, are any automobiles built solely in the U.S., even if from foreign parts? If I look over there, that's because that's where my notes are. Okay? So, anyway, this is a very good question. The first part is, what does based mean? Based in the U.S. does not mean the company was founded here. It could mean that to some people, in which case the only answer to this question is Ford and GM. Ford and General Motors are the only two U.S. companies, really. Tesla, technically, but I'll get into that in a minute. So, if that is what you mean, based in the U.S. means it was founded here, there's really only two left. Chrysler was founded here, but most of their operations are not actually here. Because they're part of the Fiat Chrysler, the overall. So, it's that I think is really semantic and a dumb way to look at things. The question was expanded on though. So Casey did go into and say, are any automobiles built solely here, even if the parts are foreign? And for that answer, the answer is almost all of them. Because there are actually fewer imports for sale here than there are cars and trucks, SUVs, etc., that are made elsewhere and brought here. So, in other words, way more vehicles are made here in the country and sold here than they are made somewhere else and brought here to sell. So, the easiest way to do that is to name the companies that are almost 100% imported. Those companies there's just a handful of them. There are Fiat, Alfa Romeo, Mitsubishi, and I believe that's it. Volvo. But that's not totally true either, because Volvo does make some stuff here. So it's those first three are about it. Otherwise, everything is either made here or at least partially made here, or at least some of the company's models are made here. So then it will just depend on what model you're looking at. So what I did was I compiled a short list. So I'm going to be looking over there a lot because that's where the list is. I compiled a short list of vehicle manufacturers with a broad paintbrush saying where they're building vehicles. Okay. So this is, to start off though, I want to say a couple of things. First, most of the vehicles sold in this country are at least 60% made here. So all of these, when I say it's where it's made, you can expect that at least 60%, probably more, because most of them are more in the 80s, at least 60% is US based in both parts and assembly. All of these, if I say it's U.S. made entirely, or mostly anyway, I don't think anybody's over like the 97% mark. Most of these are made, assembled, and everything here, and only a handful of things are imported, usually electronics. The next thing to say is that if you're going by where it's made, so where the parts are sourced and how it's assembled, currently the most American-made vehicle is a Honda. Okay? So keep those in mind because those are important numbers. So just running down the list really quick, it's not really in alphabetical order. I just kind of made a list as manufacturers came to me and I put down the info. So Ford vehicles, almost all made in Michigan. They also have operations in Mexico and Asia. They don't import from Europe anymore because they don't sell the cars that they were importing from Europe here anymore. General Motors, which includes Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, Cadillac, so on. Those are almost all made in Michigan and Texas and Mexico. They also have operations in like Indiana, places like that. So mostly U.S., almost all U.S. In terms of most of their stuff. But they, like I said, there are imported items. Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram products. So I'm going to separate FCA. I'm going to go with just Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram. Those are primarily made in Michigan, Indiana, and Canada. A lot of operations in Canada for especially Chrysler, but for these three brands. FCA does a lot of things in Canada because Chrysler was already doing a lot of things in Canada. So there's that. As I said before, Fiat is mostly imported. Same with Alfa Romeo, one of their other brands. Toyota products, those are almost all made in Texas, and I believe it's Indiana or Illinois. Now I can't remember. The handful of imports that they have are mostly Lexus branded, and they're just a couple of models, and I believe it's only specific versions of those models that are imported. Otherwise, made in the U.S. Honda, made all over the U.S., Georgia, places like that, and they have some operations in Mexico, and they do import a couple of things from Japan, but those are not entire vehicles. Those are things like transmissions, stuff like that. So there's Honda. Nissan, their North American HQ is in Tennessee. They make most of their vehicles in Tennessee. Their Smyrna plant in Tennessee, where they assemble, paint, make the powertrains, do everything involved, including with the electric Nissan Leaf. So everything involved in the process, almost all of it is contained right there in Smyrna or the area of Tennessee. And that is the largest operation of any manufacturer here. So there you go. They also make in Mississippi. It's where mostly they make trucks. So they have, then you have Hyundai. Most everything Hyundai makes is somewhere here and Mexico. So North America and Mexico. Those are, or U.S. and Mexico, because Mexico's part of North America, right? So U.S. and Mexico. Those are their two primary places of operation. Kia, same thing. Mostly U.S., mostly Mexico. So it's kind of a mix of those. Tesla. So Tesla builds their vehicles that they're selling here in California, but over half of the parts for those vehicles are imported. So in other words, they do not make them there. They import them from somewhere else. Now, it's hard to get the mix on the matrix for Tesla, and I know the Tesla fans are going to get all hot and bothered if I'm not perfect for this, and I'm not going to be because I don't know the exact numbers, because as far as I know, the only person that does know the exact numbers is Elon Musk and some of his team, because they do not list exactly where every part on every vehicle comes from outside of a place of origin, which is the only reason I know how much is imported. Other than that, some of those foreign parts are from American-based manufacturers, but they may not have necessarily been made in the U.S. They may have been imported from Europe, Asia, somewhere else. So it's hard to tell, but I will say that Tesla is not made in the U.S., not at the same level that these other companies are. I talked about Mitsubishi earlier, almost all, in fact, all imported, as far as I know. That may change now because Nissan has ownership, so they may change things because the import model does not make money. It loses money. I'll get into that when we're done here because that's something, it's part of the business that needs to be understood. BMW is about half and half. So they build stuff here. I believe they have operations in Georgia, if I remember right. And they import products. So it just depends on what vehicle you're looking at. For the most part, sedans are imported. SUVs are made here. That's kind of the generalization for BMW. Mercedes, same thing. Most of the SUVs are made here. Other ones are sedans and stuff are probably imported. Subaru makes most everything here. And they do it at a lot of I don't know that they even have their own dedicated plant. They may by this point. I haven't looked it up, but I don't remember anything. I'm not recalling anything offhand that says that they have. And those are, the vehicles that are for sale here are made here, and usually to shared plants. So they have agreements with like General Motors and stuff like that, where they're sharing of a manufacturer. So in other words, they have a manufacturing facility. Subaru has 2 manufacturing lines there. GM has 1, 2, whatever the others. But Subaru makes pretty much everything here. They do import parts from Japan, but it's not a huge major portion for most of their vehicles. Mazda's the same as Subaru in most ways. So they have their own plants, they're sharing plants, they build most everything here. They do import from Japan, but those imports are not specific vehicles like the vehicle's finished product. It's mostly stuff for vehicles, the parts and stuff. Volkswagen makes almost everything in Tennessee. They have a huge plant, huge set of operations there. They only import a few things, and most of those imports for this market are from Mexico. So they talking smaller vehicles. So, and then Volvo. Volvo makes a couple of things here, but pretty much everything else is European and imported here. So that's kind of my rundown. There's others here and there. I probably missed somebody and stuff, but that's the generalization. And the brands that I listed, I did not list any of the luxury brands because, well, they're usually part of the major brand, and most luxury vehicles are based on a regular vehicle from the mainstream lineup of that company. And then I said I was going to talk about the economics, why this is. It has something to do with a lot of economics. So to make money, the company has to be able to produce the product and sell it at a profit. That's kind of a given. That's how commerce works. That's basic capitalism. To make a profit is not just to build it cheaper than you sell it for. It includes the shipping and the movement of the product and the cost for the components for the product. All of those things play, and if you do a lot of moving around, so if you do a lot of shipping back and forth, especially with heavy stuff like automotive, if you do a lot of shipping back and forth, you're losing money. If you do a lot of currency exchange, that's another big factor. If you do a lot of currency exchange where you're bringing from another place and bringing it here, there's a difference in the cost because of the currency rates. So, if you're going with the US dollar because that's what it's being sold for, the Japanese yen might change. It changes a lot, right? It goes like this a lot. And to avoid that, a lot of those Japanese companies started building here. Same goes with parts and components. A lot of things you can lose money or gain depending by going back and forth. So companies try to avoid that. Some markets are not conducive to building and importing at all. So you have like China, where you almost very rarely, but as far as I know in automotive, nobody is building and taking it there. You have to make at least half of it there. And they have these agreements and all these other legal requirements that the government has set up there for protection. It's a protectionist thing, just like we have, like people go on and on about Trump's tariffs, but that's what they are. It's a form of protectionism. And those things are all factors that work into the economics of automotive. So Mitsubishi is an example. They don't make as much per unit because they're not only losing, generally, it's not always, but they're not only taking the risk of losing money on the currency exchange from Japanese to US currencies, but they're also paying all that shipping. They're hauling all those vehicles across the ocean to us, and then trying to sell them here. So and then they have taxes that they have to pay because they didn't make it here. So all those things factor in, and it's one of the big reasons Mitsubishi has struggled so much in this market. It's probably one of the big reasons, those are some of the big reasons that Suzuki eventually gave up. Those are all things that are part of the business. It's part of the economics. And so it all plays in. So that's kind of the general answer. I don't know. I can't give you, very specifics on each one. I'm not going to go into that. But we're coming up on 15 minutes on this video, so I think I've gone on long enough. But that's what I got. So if you have a question, you can put it down in the comments down there. You can hit me up at Aaron on Autos up there. And you can find me on Quora. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. Stalk me. Whatever it takes. If you have a question and if I can answer it, I'll do it. All right? Almost went into an A-Team riff there. I should show you this because this is one of my favorite things. Check that out. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what I got. It's been Aaron from AaronOnAutos.com. Talk to you again soon.